So I guess we will need to start the webinar. Oh, it's already started, right? Oh, okay. Thank you. So I can present this slide. Okay, let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this MICCAI Student Board webinar. This series will be co-hosted by Harry and I. I'm Reina from MICCAI Student Board. In this webinar, we'll discuss how to conduct thesis research and writing with our MICCAI Student Board PhD Thesis Madness finalists. So before we get started, I'll briefly introduce the MICCAI Student Board. This is a student initiative in the MICCAI Society since 2010. And the goal is to simulate the involvement of students in the community and enhance the student networking and advise the MICCAI board on matters related to students. So this is our current board members. We have many roles that take responsibility of organize those social events, sports events, those professional events, and this is a webinar event. So today I will co-host with Harry, and this is me. And for people who are interested in joining this board to serve for the MICCAI students members and the whole MICCAI Society, we have many 8 opening positions this year. So you can, it's abundant position, you can apply. So stay tuned from our newsletter that I will send out soon via the MICCAI newsletter and the social media announcements. Okay, so in the last MICCAI conference at Morocco, we have held those different activities like academia, industry events, and emerge workshops, sports, social events, and also we have this yearly webinars. So today we will feature the PhD Thesis Madness. This is also hosted at the MICCAI Student Board at the MICCAI 2024. We feature 7 finalists, and those are their research topics. So you can check their Thesis Madness presentation from our YouTube list. You can check the YouTube MICCAI Educational Initiative, and you can find this playlist. So, and also feel free to follow up on social media like LinkedIn and Twitter. So today we have 7 amazing panelists from the Thesis Madness finalists who will share with us their PhD journey and how to conduct their thesis research and thesis writing. So this is the schedule. So we'll first introduce each of the panelists and ask them to give us a brief introduction about their thesis research. And then we have this panel discussion about around thesis research, writing, and your PhD journey, and some support. And then we open the floor to ask, audience can come in and join the Q&A session. So let's first meet our 7 panelists, introduce each of them. So our first panelist is Sassam Matafa. He's a student from the TMU, and his research is focused on transforming medical data into auditory feedback that enhance surgical procedures. His work has been featured in the MICCAI Young Scientist Award. And in addition, he holds a background in music and piano interpretation that facilitate his interdisciplinary research. So Sassam, would you mind to talk about your thesis research?
Oh yeah, hello everyone. Thank you for having me. As Reina said, my research is about designing auditory feedback and sonification methods for surgical navigation. As we all know, currently we have a lot of possibilities in terms of sensing technology, analysis, AI, and all these can be very beneficial for improving surgical safety and precision. But the only way of presenting such information to the surgeons is currently through different kind of visual displays, which would challenge surgeons to follow different information channels and visual channels. Imagine that you drive a car and all the information you need is displayed on multiple displays, and you need to focus on them instead of focusing on the road. So in my research, I aim to design auditory feedback models for providing surgeons with an additional information channel, in particular auditory feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. That's amazing and very unique research direction. So utilizing the multimodal channel in our human perception. Okay, look forward to more discussion later. So our next panelist is Julian Suck. He's a PhD student at the University of Twente. And during his PhD, he focused on geometric deep learning for 3D vascular hemodynamics and beyond. His research interests are in deep learning, group theory, and partial differential equations, where he likes to combine in the field of scientific machine learning for 3D medical data. So Julian, would you like to talk about the research?
Right. Yeah. Hi, everyone. So yeah, as you just said, I'm at the Department of Applied Mathematics. So I'm a math background, but I have been in my PhD focusing on medical imaging and medically adjacent fields. And so the core question that we tried to answer in my thesis was basically, we wanted to predict hemodynamic biomarkers. Hemodynamic biomarkers can basically be things like arterial wall shear stress, blood pressure, and there's a lot of other derived quantities. And you can use them to sort of in diagnosis and in patient care and prognosis. And we basically tried to develop machine learning models that made it easy to work with these biomarkers and maybe, given a new patient, predict these biomarkers. And so, yeah, in this framework, we basically looked for the most suitable machine learning model architecture and sort of explored what different ways, what sort of the optimal way of modeling hemodynamic biomarkers in 3D meshes. So it's always 3D shaped. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Julian. Look forward to more discussion. Okay, so our third panelist is John Kolkoff. He's a PhD candidate from the TU Darmstadt. And his research is committed to advancing affordable healthcare AI to expand access to care. So he initially explored feature disentanglement during his master's, and right now his current research focuses on lightweight and robust segmentation methods through neurocellular automata. And his work has been featured in IPMI and also the MICCAI Scientist Award. So John, welcome to talk about the research.
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. Exactly. So the focus of my PhD is democratizing learning with the neurocellular automata. And the idea is basically that when you look at the number of physicians worldwide, something that you see is that it's not really evenly distributed. You have this problem that, for example, on the continent of Africa, you're lacking a lot of physicians. And of course, something that would be great would be to deploy AI methods to support them in their daily work. But the problem is that the community focuses mostly on parameter-heavy architectures, and these are not really applicable because you need strong infrastructure. And we have identified NCAs as a possible solution to that, which is a much more lightweight, robust architecture that's very interesting. The problem is when we actually started working with NCAs, they had a lot of limitations. You could only run them, for example, on small images. They were also not converging very stably, and that's something we solved in these multiple publications. And the last one we did at MICCAI was about unsupervised adaptation. And we even showed that not only can you do unsupervised adaptation, but you can do it directly on your smartphone and even do a full training there.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, John, for the introduction. I think it's meaningful, like for the easy access to healthcare resources. I'll definitely check your thesis and your talk on the YouTube channel. Thank you. Okay, so our next panelist is Balamarali Murugesan. He's a PhD student at Eco Technology, Sapura at Montreal. He's currently working on applying deep learning to computer vision and medical image analysis. Earlier, he completed his master's on accelerating MRI reconstruction, and his work has been published in MICCAI, MSB Media, ISBI, etc. Marali.
Bala, yeah, it's called Bala. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, thanks for the introduction. Currently I'm focusing on building calibrated models. By that I mean the models has to be accurate as well as reliable, which is very important for deploying the models in the real world. And that too, in specific, I'm focusing on building calibrated models in the field of medical image segmentation. For that, we have proposed 3 solutions. One, and in all the common thing is we have found that instead of doing it in test time, you can do you can make the model calibratable during the training time itself. For that, we have found that controlling the logits during the training is very helpful for calibration. And we propose solutions like including a margin to control the logits, and based on the neighborhood information of the particular pixel, we have modeled the logits based on that. And besides that, we have also modeled the logits based on the location specific and then class specific. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Maroma. We'll definitely talk about later in your PhD journey. So our next panelist is Cosmin Bercia, and he's a postdoc at the TUM. And during his PhD, he developed innovative machine learning algorithm for identifying anomalies in medical images. And Cosmin has authored several peer-reviewed medical image papers and featured at high-impact conference and journals. He's keen on fostering collaborations that integrate anomaly detection, generative modeling, distribution learning, and multimodal approaches to enable early and accurate diagnosis of complex medical conditions. So, Cosmin, would you like to talk more about your research?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks a lot for the introduction. Yes, so in gist, what I aim to do in my PhD, maybe if you allow me to share this one slide. Okay. Perfect. So in the gist is, like you said, identifying anomalies in medical imaging. And what I want to emphasize here is that by anomalies, we mean anything that deviates from the norm, even though we don't have classes for these samples, we don't have labels. And the aim is to train these generative models to learn the normative distribution, like our normal brain, for instance, what would have looked like, and to find any deviations from it. So if you like to give it a try, the code is online. I will just roll to the page here with the barcode. Yep, so please try it out. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Cosmin. So our next panelist is Mei Zhang. He graduated from the Chinese University of Hong Kong, and his research centers around the intersection of machine learning and healthcare, with a particular focus on medical image analysis. And he has a strong desire to enhance the applicability of machine learning algorithm with a focus on the robustness and efficiency, generalizability, reliability, and privacy. And he's passionate about leveraging large distributed data set to empower real-world application in the healthcare domain. And he has published 18 papers in the top journals like Nature Communication, NJM, AI, TMI, iClear, etc. So, Mary, would you like to talk about your research?
Yeah, thanks for the introduction. So, as introduced, my main interest is to do like the machine learning algorithm with healthcare, and to be more specific, I'm trying to use a federated learning, which is kind of a distributed training paradigm to do the model training. Well, compared to the centralized training, so the federated learning is kind of paradigm to utilize the distributed data. Well, in medical area, we have noticed that more and more data set has been established based on multi-hospital or multi-institutions. So that's why we need to access different or distributed data. Well, the data itself, it may have the privacy concern or some security issues. Well, how to utilize the distributed could be a very important and a challenging direction. So I'm going to try to discover how to use the faculty learning to empower the medical data towards the real applications. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mei. That's an important topic. Recently, very trendy topic like faculty learning, distributed learning. So thank you for introduction. Our last panelist is Pushing Chu. He's a PhD student from the Shanghai Jiao Tong University. And his research focused on augmented reality and surgical AI. And he has won a fund in the NSFC. And he also has authorship over 15 papers, including IEEE, TB, ME, TMI, TVCG, Information Fusion, IGCAR, and MICCAI. So pushing you to like to introduce about the research.
Okay, thank you for your introduction. And it's 1:00 a.m. here, so I would feel a little bit sleepy, but it's okay. So I'm Pushing Chu. I'm from Shanghai Jiao Tong University, and my PhD thesis title is Augmented Reality Surgical Application for Soft Tissue and Microscopic Procedures. And we know surgical application has various applications, but its widespread application faces several challenges, including the high dispersion problem and it's not suitable for soft tissues. So to tackle these challenges, so we construct an augmented reality surgical environment using our proposed multi-view interactive virtual physics fusion method. And then we track and correct the deformation of soft tissues using our proposed sparseness non-rigid registration pipeline. And finally, for microscopic surgeries, we developed a spatial temporal fusion network to recognize the surgical scene, and we developed a face-specific augmented reality surgical application for microscopic surgeries. And we conducted phantom animal, cadaver, and clinical experience in cooperation with our medical and industry partners. So that's what about my PhD thesis, and thank you.
Okay, thank you for your introduction. So that's our panelist introduction. So next we'll start the panel discussion on the thesis research and writing. So we have four basic topics about thesis writing, thesis research, how you start your research, and how you plan for the thesis writing, presentation, and defense, and how about your next step after PhD and what you gain from the PhD, and what kind of support or lesson learned you would like to share. So maybe I can start to ask the first question. So maybe you start from the early time in your PhD. I guess the audience may, many students about to start their PhD or master's. So I understand that starting a PhD is a big commitment for one's life. You need to invest time, money, and also some other opportunity costs in making this decision. So I'm wondering, what makes you to come into this PhD program in the beginning, and you like to share of your some experience or stories, and also in the PhD or master application, you have multiple opportunities. How do you choose between different opportunities? Yeah.
I mean, I can answer if you
Oh
want.
yeah.
Yeah. So for me, it was quite easy because I really enjoyed writing my master thesis. I really enjoyed writing my bachelor thesis, and that was really the things I enjoyed the most about my studies. So yeah, I already knew that research was for me. So I just really enjoyed the whole process of being able to freely explore a topic, and then at the end summing up your findings. And yeah, the way I chose my supervisor and where I ended up with my PhD was because of my supervisor. I basically talked to him, I looked him up, I read some of his papers, and I was really convinced that this was a good fit. So that would also be a tip that I would give. So really choose a good supervisor that you connect with, you vibe with, in a sense.
Yeah, I guess maybe starting a master could be a big like a bridge to facilitate whether you want to proceed with your PhD or maybe find other directions. That's a good process.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah. Many people basically go straight from their master's into a PhD at the same chair. This can be a great opportunity to, get to know the chair. I, for example, did it completely differently. I went somewhere completely different. And for me, that was also a very nice experience. But yeah, I think you have to find what works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's also what I just wanted to say. I think if you know that you maybe want to do a PhD, it might be smart to already choose a group where you can do a master so that it's easier to get into. For me, it was also a kind of smooth process. Like I never really thought about doing a PhD until I did my master thesis. And then I really enjoyed doing it. And then I had this great opportunity that I could stay in the same group. And so it was a very natural choice for me.
Maybe a different way of doing things. So after my master thesis, I did enjoy the research, but I wanted to be in industry to make something more applied in computer vision. So I had like a 2 years break where I worked as a research engineer and then still decided that I want to dig deeper into research and I returned to do the PhD. So it's possible also the other way around.
Very nice.
Maybe I can also add something because I also started with my bachelor thesis at our chair and did the same research that I'm doing still in my PhD. But another reason was that I could combine my music studies with my computer science study. And that was because of the my supervisor, Nasir Nawab, who is a genius and who supported me to combine these two crazy fields together. This motivated me to pursue this path. And I think it's very difficult to go away of this group. If as soon as you start working in this group, you want to continue. That was the reason I continued from bachelor and master's to PhD.
I agree. And maybe I can share something that I'm not from the master to PhD. So I started my PhD after my bachelor. So I had not did the master. Well, when I'm going to graduate, I'm really like confused. I don't know what to do because at that time I can directly go to the company to earn money or can also go to master or PhD. Well, I don't know, but I try to give myself the answer by just doing it. So I take the internship in the company, try to feel the working life, and also I try to apply for a research assistant in a lab, try to feel like the academic research, and then I feel like maybe I'm better at doing research than just doing the coding work. So that's why I choose to go to the PhD study. So I think maybe that's also another way, just make yourself in the environment to feeling like what you like to do. Maybe could be another way.
So I will also like to share my experience. So my situation is very familiar with like Mary because I'm in a combined master PhD program, and so I do not have a master degree. So I get my PhD degree directly. So but in my bachelor degree, I went to the lab. I start go to the lab and do some experience in this domain. So I'm familiar with. I'm quite interested in what I'm doing. So I want to continue my study in my PhD degree. So I think interest is very important. And if you are interested in what you are doing, so you will be very happy to do what you want to do. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have shared diverse experience from bachelor to PhD or from master to PhD, or maybe you can transfer in between during your masters. Yeah. So Harry, would you like to ask?
Yes, thank you a lot, guys. So the next question would be, how did you decide your research topic or your overall PhD direction? What motivated your PhD topic? And was it a linear process or was it quite non-linear to get to the final PhD direction?
So maybe I can start here. Yeah. So yeah, generally, it's based on the group's interest. Initial, the meta direction will be given by the supervisor, I guess. But after that, it's about in that meta direction, working with the supervisor, we try to find what are the intricate things and later try to propose novel solution for that. in my case also, both in my master's and in my PhD, it was this thing. Initially in master's, they said, okay, let's do MRA acceleration. And in that, when that was the meta thesis topic, but in that we went deep and kind of proposed algorithms for edge devices. And in my PhD, the thing was, okay, let's do something on model uncertainty. So then we started focusing on, okay, rather than focusing on classification, which is kind of commonly approached problems, we focused our thing mainly on segmentation. So I think in my case, it was like this. So given a meta problem and later working on that and then finding, like some gaps in that and proposing solutions for that.
That's a very interesting question, Harry. Thanks. And I think it's very difficult from the viewpoint of a freshly graduated master student to choose a topic. And I think most of the topics are kind of predefined by founding and by professors and chairs. So I think my tip here would be to really try to do some research on the topic and see that you have some intrinsic motivation to solve an issue, or so something, a question if this really solves a clinical, for instance, in our case, in the medical imaging community, if it solves a clinical need, and what's your personal motivation to do so, because then the goal would probably change along the way, and also the methods that you're using to target it. So I think it's definitely a non-linear process. That will change based also on your experience. You will learn a lot during this process, and you'll have a different view probably in the end. But I think at the beginning, it's important to take the time and do a lot of research on the topic and the future supervisor. Really get to know what you're getting into.
I guess on the flip side, I could add that it is important to sort of at the beginning listen to your supervisor and sort of let them sort of push you in the right direction. But I think especially if you want to stay in academia, it's also important to try to get to independently thinking about problems that you could solve and about the research problems that you could tackle, and then becoming more and more independent towards the end of your PhD.
And I think that's also why it's so important that you're doing a topic that actually motivates you, that you can really spend time on without being too frustrated about it. I mean, for me, it was also it was actually a very interesting process, because we had these 3 topics. We talked about basically what I could do. I don't even remember the other 2s anymore. And then we had this NCA topic where we basically only had a very rough demo, which was a very robustly growing emoji. And there was 1 paper on segmentation on very low resolution images. And it was fascinating me so much that it was so robust that we really wanted to try it out for medical image segmentation. And then we also had this very non-linear process of basically first 9 months, nothing worked. We tried out so many things. And then once we finally had something that worked, it went all a lot more smooth. We could much easier find connecting papers but getting to that point. And I mean, would also say, as someone who took that risk for a topic that's very niche, I would say it can really pay off, but it also needs to be something you really need to be motivated to suffer through for the first month until you find something that works.
That sounds dire, suffering through it.
That's really great. Thank you, guys. I guess we should move on now to the next question. Weina?
Oh, yes. So as I mentioned, it's probably a non-linear process in your PhD research and discovery process. I'm wondering, in this process, would you like to dive into some more details, like some key moments or memorable stories that you find more inspiring or shape your PhD research path, or maybe some talk in the during the conference, or a rebuttal with the reviewers, or a discussion with your supervisor or peers, or any memorable moments that can shape your PhD. Or maybe not a very key, like a short moment, maybe also a period of time that's important in the PhD research.
Yeah, maybe I can share an interesting story first. So, actually speaking, in my several papers, I almost get more than half of my paper ideas during taking the shower. So it's quite an interesting thing. So, I try to read a lot of papers at the daytime, and then go back home, take a shower, and then I just I don't know how to say, just I suddenly get an idea and to say, hey, maybe I'm gonna try, and tomorrow it works. So it's quite interesting. I don't know why, but later I read a book the idea is called learn to learn. So say your brain has two different modes. So when you concentrate on reading, you just like focus on some minimum or low area, you try to collect more information, but this kind of information, they don't connect to each other. But when you're going to shower or going to run or going to other activities, this kind of points connect together may give you some different inspiration. So I highly recommend, if you don't know what's your new idea or how to do in the next step, maybe you can try to collect more and more information and then just back to your daily life. Don't thinking too much about the study or idea, just do what you want to do, and then maybe you can suddenly get inspiration or something. But it's based on you have to read a lot. If you read nothing, then there are some inspiration. I think quite an interesting point to try to change your mind or your working mode in your brain. Yeah.
Maybe I can also share something similar to what Meru said, because in the first 2 years of my PhD, I did somehow continuation of my master thesis. And at some point I thought, okay, it's not interesting anymore for me. I need something more sophisticated, more challenging. And during the first 2 years, I had a lot of interactions with people, with our group is also very diverse and big. There are a lot of people who you can talk with and get ideas or at conferences. But at some point I thought, I'm really blacked out. I cannot process all of this information from all the papers, everything. And then I tried to get focused. I got focused on just reading very diverse papers, and just by analyzing on my own to try out to connect all of these things together, because nobody else knows about your topic better than you. You are the only one who gradually you get really, you belong to the few people who understand about the topic, because it's very specific. So during the time that I just got focused on reading papers, and as Mary said, just thinking about it as when you take a shower or even when you sleep, you are processing everything. And then at some point, then you bring the idea again to the team, then they help you to process and develop more and more to make it something interesting.
I think the last thing you touched on there is really important. So the talking to your team, so communication. So for me, for example, these ideas can come from just sitting down and thinking about a problem, but it can also come from going to conferences and talking to a lot of people, watching research posters and talking to the people. And yeah, so that can also spark inspiration, I feel like.
So maybe I have some to share. So because I am doing some like computer assisted intervention work, so I have several cooperation with the surgeons. So I have some stories, interesting stories with surgeons. So for computer assisted work, so especially developing a navigation system is full of unexpected challenges and engineering problems. So I have to keep in communication with with the surgeons, and even some small issues like a UI crash can slow down the experience and delay our publication. So, but unfortunately, the surgeon I work with has several programming and AI skills himself. So he can solve several problems efficiently by himself. So, which really speeds our progress. And another interesting story is that, so we conducted a cadaver experience, but I'm really afraid of that situation in the operations. So after communication with surgeons, he conducted the cadaver experience directly by himself. So, and he even debugged our programs in the operations room. So that's really interesting. So the idea is that if you are doing some computer assisted intervention work, finding a live surgeon will definitely speed up your progress. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we mentioned about how you get your inspiration and how you can during the collaboration and communication with peers. That's also helpful. Any other thoughts or interesting story?
I mean, I fully agree. I think just chatting with colleagues helps a lot and just brainstorming ideas. I mean, often like the best ideas just happen just talking about our topics and just seeing where it goes. And we usually get quite nice ideas from there. So I would also say that was really something I saw because Germany was very strict also on the COVID regulations. And in 22, we were still not really going to the office. And afterwards, we really saw a lot more cool ideas coming up just by seeing each other much more.
Maybe we can kind of wrap up the topic on PhD thesis research and now move on to the thesis writing and presentation. Harry, would you like to?
Yeah, thank you. So our next question is, when did you start to write your thesis? What was the timeline like in your last years of your PhD? I don't know if anyone had any thoughts on that.
I mean, that's the forbidden question, right? Never ask a PhD student how their thesis is going. No, so it really depends on, I mean, in some universities, you write papers and submit these papers, and then these papers are basically the content of your thesis, which is, I think, the most common thing to do nowadays. In some universities, you really write a thesis that is just like self-contained. You know, you literally write 100, 200 pages of your research down. And so, yeah, so that's kind of the first question. And then, so for me, it was, I just wrote a cumulative thesis. So I wrote a bunch of papers, and now I'm in the process of, trying to like put them together in a single document and sort of write nice periphery around that. And for me, so my contract has finished, but I'm still writing my thesis, which is happens a lot, at least in the Netherlands, where I'm doing my PhD.
Yes, so it's the same here. I don't actively write on it, but I just wait for some responses of some journal things. So this is another thing. Like the writing itself could be just a collection of papers, and you have like introduction and background. But then it's you never know when to like stop with the publications or what to include and what not. And I'm still waiting for some answers. So that's maybe also like a line to cut when it's enough to submit your thesis. When you feel it's enough to like submit it.
Similar stage as that of Cosmin. Yeah, as he said, I think we never know like when should we stop. Like, okay, is this enough? Like 3 chapters or 4 chapters, is this enough? So yeah, I'm currently like collecting the like, works which I've done, and I'm working on some more things. And then I think and when they say okay, now it's enough, I think it's supervisor's call more than us. I think when they allow us, I think we'll try to always push more. Yeah. So I'm yet to write. Like Julian said, mine is also more about the collection thing. You get the papers, then you put it, and then you try to write an introduction and conclusion around your papers. And generally, we try to keep it in a same direction, whatever we have done. So I think that gives a linear thesis. Yeah. Otherwise, it becomes very tricky to even write a common introduction, I guess.
But that's also maybe a good point that when you talk with your PI about like which papers you're going to write, to already have kind of a direction in mind. Because like depending on which type of papers you're writing, it's going to be a lot more complicated to get them all under like one thesis. And so that you really have this one main idea that you're following and not having like 5 different directions you have to somehow connect in the end.
That is a very good point. That is super important to figure out as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Go ahead, Nina.
Yeah, regarding we talk about how to organize your thesis writing, maybe you can talk more about that. So I know there are probably two kind of ways to organize your thesis. One is kind of a linear combination of your previous publications, and the other is more like a structured way, like you have the overall problem and the literature review and the method and the evaluation kind of things. So I'm wondering, or maybe a combine of both. So I'm wondering, how do you organize your thesis writing, and how you combine your previous publication with your thesis? Any tips and experience to share?
Maybe I can answer to this. So first of all, this can also depend to the graduate school and the rules that graduate school determines. Some, for example, at TUM or at our graduate school, if you have two full papers that you are the first author of that, you can write your thesis as cumulative, which is also something that many people would do that. Otherwise, you have to write a monogram. But also, it depends on how your topic is and how you want to tell the story, because at the end, you want to tell a story about your thesis. And if you think that it's more diverse to cover other topics rather than your publications, it would also make sense to write a monogram. I decided to write a monogram because it's also a new topic. And after these discussions with my supervisor, we decided to go for a monogram to have a document that covers many aspects of the sonic interaction design for medical applications, not only limited to my previous papers.
So I'm still a PhD student, and I even not start writing my PhD thesis. So I have no much ideas about this question, but I think the situation is different at different universities and different countries. So I believe that in China and in some university in China, and we need to organize our PhD thesis in a second way. That is we need to structure from problem formulation to method to evaluation, because every section of your PhD thesis should be should have some collections, and the logic should be it should be well organized. So I believe the second one, I prefer the second one. Thank you.
Any other thoughts about this thesis writing? If not, maybe we can move to the next question.
Yes, so we also had a question about the thesis defense. So people who have done their thesis defense, could you give us maybe some advice you would have for people doing their thesis events? And maybe you could give us an idea of how long it took you to prepare before you did your thesis defense.
Well, that's quite an interesting question. So maybe I can share something that, well, so our defense is almost the most important things in your PhD life. I mean, you need to summarize what you did in the last few years and try to present a very high quality presentation. So of course you need to prepare as long as possible. Well, here I can give a point that because in your oral defense, you may include several papers in your final thesis and present several works. Well, these works could be done in different years, like in year 1, year 2, or year 3. So, well, in each year, you may have the opportunity to do the presentation maybe at some conference, or you have some group meeting, or have something else. Maybe you can take this as the opportunity to try to present and refine each of your work, and then as the final oral defense, you may feel more easy and more comfortable to present several works together. So I think that so just catch each opportunity or chance to practice your presentation. Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking.
Anyone else? I guess Cosmin, you have defense yet already, so maybe Can you share of your experience in defense?
I didn't, so I didn't have my defense. It depends, I think, on the university as well. In TUM, it takes some time. After you submit your thesis, they will go to some commissions, there will be some circulation rounds. So especially if you have invited professors for the committee, it will take some time to organize. So that didn't happen yet for me. So I'm still waiting, so I cannot share much about the defense itself.
So anyone else want to add on this? If not, maybe we can move to the next topic about the next step after your PhD. So maybe you are still doing PhD, maybe you are just finished. So I'm wondering, maybe PhD is like a long journey, but it's a journey towards another path or direction in your life goal. So I'm wondering, how do you shape your some initial idea after what do you want to go do after a PhD, and how does this idea shape, and whether your current plan is still on the same path or is you have changed your directions? Any stories or experience to share?
Yeah, maybe I can go this. Like, yeah, I'm predominantly thinking of going towards industry and working in this applied scientist kind of roles, where I feel that sometimes when we go deep into certain problems and then we provide solutions, but I think it's also good to have some bigger picture. Like if you want to use that specific research solution as a product, then I think it's important to know the entire ecosystem around that. So both in my master's and in my PhD, I've always been working closely with industries. In my master's, I was working with GE Healthcare, and in my PhD, I have done a couple of internships, and then also I'm closely working with companies and working on fundus images. So in all this, I believe that like apart from going deep into a particular problem and proposing novel solutions are very important breakthroughs, it's also crucial to deploy it in the real world and then make it useful there. So that I feel that going to an industry and building startups later would be a good fit for me. So that's how tap.
I think this question, like it's industry or academia, it's in everyone's mind even before they start the PhD. I would say it's not so important to think about that at this stage. It's to rather find your way in what you want to do, like what you want to have. If you want to do research, what's your research topic, and to develop yourself in that area. And this decision, like if it's industry, academia, or startup, would probably change a lot of times along the way. So I wouldn't focus on this question, like where I want to do this research, and most focused on what I want to achieve and who I want to become. And things will change a lot.
Yeah, I totally agree. PhD is also a process to shape your personality or how your knowledge, and you probably will change the idea somehow during this process. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Now maybe Harry will come to the next.
Yes, another question we had was, are there any useful resources that you would recommend for planning for looking for opportunities after your PhD? It could be, social media, some sort of online community, a newsletter. So I don't know if anyone had anything they could recommend.
I mean, one thing is, of course, if you want to stay in academia, you can just use your chance during the conferences and talk to as many people as possible to get the connections up, because, of course, by email, it's always a bit more difficult to get in and to get a chance to have a chat. But at MICCAI, you just usually have the chance to talk to anyone.
Yeah, I will
Yeah.
also suggest two things. Like if you are like looking about this, even if you were not decided about industry or academia, I think like since it's almost generally PhD is 3 to 4 years long, like you can spend like one summer in industry, and then maybe in one summer you can actually go to different labs, more like different academic labs, and then explore that. So it like it gives you different perspectives about how in different labs people are approaching. For example, in certain labs they'll be more focused on like fundamental problems and solving it. In some labs they are more into applied thing, like they are more into a application perspective. And so like exploring these things, and then in industry if you go, their perspective is entirely different. So it's better to actually explore all this during your PhD, apart from your thesis thing. It's also important to use this opportunity, especially during the summer or the third year. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I don't know if anyone else wanted to add to that. If not, we can move on.
Yes, so we probably kind of talk about the last topic on the oral experience and the lessons and support. So I'm wondering maybe if you have any lessons learned during this process of the PhD study, and if there are any choices that you would like to change or insist if you go through your PhD again.
I think that from every lesson you learn something. So I don't know if I would like, I think there are no shortcuts. So you have to go through it and experience it yourself. Fall down and just learn from it and move on.
Yeah, like any experience is kind of unique. Yeah.
Well, I think the most important for me is just try to start your work as early as possible, because when I try to doing some work, I'll try to explore some new field or new topics. I feel highly concerned that I'm afraid that I'm not ready to do this. I need to learn a lot of like the prior knowledge, or learn a lot of course at first, then go into the topic. Well, I think actually, even though you learn a lot of course or scan a lot of online knowledge or some blog text, you will still face the same question or the same issue when you just really get into the actual work. So I think just don't be afraid, just start your work as early as possible, and then you face a problem and address it. I think that's the most efficient way to do this, and I think that's the most effective thing. And if I would go to my PhD again, I would like to say this word to myself: just get into it. Don't be so worried about you don't have the knowledge or you don't be ready. Yeah.
Exactly. So people may have the impulsive syndrome that don't want to start. I want things to be perfect. Maybe it's not, the goal is not to be perfect, but just to get your hands dirty first.
Well, that brings us on nicely to our next question, which was, it's a common experience for PhD students to have their PhD have an impact on their mental health. How have you dealt with rejections, things like imposter syndrome and pressure during your PhD?
Yeah. I think friends and teammates, the co-authors are, really like the go-to people, for like, especially nowadays when there is a conference deadline, we are working, and we are always being supported by supervisors and co-authors during that time. That's actually the most pressured, I think, during the near to the conference deadlines. And I think like Mary mentioned, I think the imposter syndrome, I don't think it doesn't go away, even if you publish like, even like 4-10 papers or something. Maybe like you just publish, and after that you get, you just feel that, okay, it's good, and then suddenly you feel like those 10 doesn't count. You are again starting from scratch. Almost you feel like that. So that imposter, I think you just live with that, and then you just continue with that. Yeah, rejections, I think, it's just, there is always some other conference going to accept your work, so don't worry. So it's fine.
Maybe one of the most difficult things is to how to get feedback, since you'll get feedback from reviewers that maybe are not the most expert in the field, so they have to filter out where this reviews or the feedback comes from. This is one of the most difficult things to understand, when the feedback is actually good for your work, or even it's just not to take into consideration. And about this, I would just say, be open for your work and just talk to people, talk to clinicians, talk to different peers, and try to have an open mind of your impact of the work.
Anything else to add on this?
Yeah, so I want to say, even though maybe you have many technical points to address the reviews, the rejections, I want to say PhD, even though PhD is important, just part of your life. The PhD journey is long, so you don't need to concern so much about rejections. So everybody got rejection. I think you just concentrate more on your own life, because in the long PhD journey, you still to try to live a better life, not just get rejections or acceptance. Even though your paper is rejected, you may got accepted by some other aspects, like your friends, like get married or other else. So many happiness in your life. So I think just when you get disappointed on PhD study, try to find something interesting in your other aspects of life.
Yeah, I agree. Like, don't wait too much on your PhD. You have other life to live as well.
Yeah.
So maybe we can talk about more questions regarding the financial issues. So I'm wondering, do you have any financial issue during your PhD study, and how do you deal with that? So what kind of financial support we can for PhD and master student to get?
I think from my friends and then my current situation, I think in general about PhD, I think they give you just enough stipend to handle your expenses, and if there is tuition fee, generally it is waived or it is generally paid by the supervisors. So I think it's enough to manage your expenses. I mean, it's not like like you can't. It's you can just manage everything with that. So it won't be like how industry pays you. It will be more in the minimal salary. But I think it is enough to manage with that. But apart from that, yeah, you have other ways to increase that salary or stipend by getting some scholarships and doing internships if possible. And yeah, should be fine. Otherwise, if you are having some really financial problem where you are not able to manage your PhD, like even I have seen some people who are doing PhD and also working part time in some places to handle that. I think it's a very difficult place to be in. So it's better to actually take care of the finances through the proper stipend, and others you can top it with the scholarships. Yeah.
I think this depends a lot on where you're doing your PhD. For instance, in Germany, I think you get a pretty decent salary. Of course, it's not the same as in industry. So as I also changed from industry, it wasn't adapting to the PhD salary, but it's something you're aware of when you start the PhD, and hopefully plan properly for the next 3 or 4 months. But it's something that you can live with, I would say.
Yeah, I guess probably depends on your different university, different style of program. Yeah. Harry, what do you want to ask?
Yes, we have one last question for you guys, and it is, who was part of your support network during your PhD journey? So who helped you through this journey, if you're happy to share?
Yeah, I mean, easily your lab mates. If you're lucky to have a bunch of other PhD students that started around the same time as you, and have the same experiences, then that can be sort of the best source of people to vent about your supervisor, or to vent about some reviewer that criticized your work, and share like stress of deadlines, and then even sort of build each other up to power through. Yeah, so I think that's, if you can get into a lab where you have lab mates, that is very, very good.
Yeah, fully agree. I mean, who can understand better your journey than your lab mates that have often very similar experiences? And yeah, then of course also like family and friends, but for them it's of course a bit different because they don't really have the insight of the same processes. But it definitely still helps to just talk about it and get it out of your system.
And of course, also the supervisors can be very supportive. So yeah, shout out to Daniel and Julia. They were super great and very good mentors along the way.
Thank you for sharing. I guess people probably need to find their support network to support the long journey in the PhD. So we wrap up with the panel discussion. Now we open the floor for the audience questions. So I see there's many questions in the chat. Maybe I can ask, maybe one question is, typically in which phase of your PhD study you started to write your first paper? I guess that's like common problem for the new starters.
I think that really depends on your field, and it depends on if you, for example, keep on doing your master thesis project or if you're jumping to a new field. So that there's no really good answer. It's totally okay to not have a paper in the first year and even like start maybe in the middle of the second year, but then like write a lot of papers in short succession, or maybe your thesis is just about this one like perfectly polished paper and you have it at the end of the 4 years. Everything's possible, I think.
And I think a very important thing with your first paper is just start with it, because the first draft you have will be very bad. The second draft you have will still be bad, and it will take a lot of iterations till you get to that level. And then each new paper, it will get a bit easier, but it's still always a process, especially if you change topics slightly, then everything gets a bit more difficult again. But I would also say it's a very important part that, like, of course, doing the research is very important, but it's also important to really taking the time to write it down, to make it understandable, to put some effort into the communication, also the figures, because like we have a lot of time to put into this topic, but the reviewers don't. They have to understand what we're trying to tell them in a very short time in comparison to us. So that's really something to do to increase the chances also on getting accepted.
Yeah, to add to John's point, I think like more than the other parts, like in paper you have related works and results and discussion, those things, right? In that, one of the key things is that introduction part where you convey the motivation and your solution. So I think even before starting to write it, you can discuss with the supervisors and then try to like what is the the chain of thoughts, right? This is what we have to tell and this is where. So that if you can capture it in the text, in the introduction. And after that, I think, when that is done, I think the other parts, like even the results and discussion is kind of trying to support what points you made there in the contributions or the introduction. So I think that's a good way to start writing.
I have something to share. So I start my first paper my second year of my PhD degree, and it takes I agree that it's very challenging for you to write your first paper because you need to learn a lot of skills, a lot of things, how to organize your paper, how to organize your manuscript, and how to draw some figures, and how to present your results. So it will take a lot of time, and for me, it takes about 3 months to write my first manuscript. So it's really challenging for me. But after that, after I'm familiar with this pipeline, and I'm for my second and third manuscripts is much easier. So I think that you need to spend a lot of time on your first manuscript. I think it's very important.
Cool. So I'm wondering, we can probably ask one last question from the audience. So based on your experience, what really should someone do in preparation for a PhD? I guess probably that's for asking for the PhD application. So what are the key aspects you want to show in your application package, like in the CV, like GitHub code or some reference letters?
I think having a master in a particular research area really helps. And if not masters, at least, with the current scenarios, I think it's better to, during bachelor's, you can go and work that research interns kind of roles where, even though you might not be directly proposing solutions, you can be part of a lab which is working in some particular problems. and later you can actually use that problems and then find people who are working in that related problems and then approach them to work on it. For example, in MRI reconstruction, like if you are working in something and then you can find people who are working in that area and then approach them and say, okay, see, this is the one which I worked on, and I think it'll be a good fit. So I think with the current setup, I think it's better to have some experience on some particular areas. Let's say in deep learning, if you want to explore LLM language model alignment, having some ideas on deep learning and some ideas on reliability can make you a good fit there. So I think even before the professor decides whether you are a good fit for them, you need to think about whether you can add any value to their team. So for that, I think it's better to build the profile by doing these kind of research roles.
Yeah, thank you for the experience. I guess maybe starting from the bachelor or master, you probably need to acquire some research experience before you apply. Otherwise, you don't know if you are fit for the research or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I think after COVID, what has happened is even professors who are in, let's say, in different parts of the globe, they're willing to, give a chance with the compute resource, and they're allowing people to explore. So I think you don't have to worry about the visa issues. Like you can still work with the supervisors.
Mhm. Any other thoughts on like PhD admission application? If not, maybe we can wrap up this webinar session. Thank you so much for all the panelists for sharing your story and experience with the MICCAI Society. And I guess for the audience who want to know more about your research, they can search your name and search your PhD thesis and find your presentation on our MICCAI Student Board YouTube. Okay, so thank you very much for all the audiences attending this webinar. We also upload this recording to our MICCAI Student Board YouTube. So thank you and have a nice day. See you.
See you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye bye.